Hey crew, welcome to Monster FPV again, and I'm building today a slammed shendrone squirt. So normally the shendrone squirt's got fairly thick ducts, and this time we're just gonna basically put little babies on like this. They're very thin, and drone actually flies a lot better with those. They're all made out of TPU. I will leave a description down below to make sure that you know where to go to get these printed. I've also, I'm in obviously Melbourne, so I've printed them locally through one of my mates, Umbrella FPV, thank you. And check these guys out as well. He does some amazing stuff. So anyway, so basically what we've got today, we've got, ooh, shit going everywhere. Okay, so when you get a whole kit, you basically get hardware. So we're talking about a frame. So the frame is, what else is dropping? The frame, it's pretty thin. As you can see, I've already put a couple of motors on it, but I wanted to show you guys what the go is and make sure that we know what to do. So when you initially get the frame, it's called hardware only. I got this from a local Australian site. I'm happy to let you know which one it is if you want to know. But basically when you get it, you only get hardware. So we're talking about standoffs, and standoffs are these little things. Now these standoffs are 40 mil, which are great for if you're doing a proper long ducts. However, for a slam squirt, you have to have the thinner, obviously, ducts. So now having those thinner ducts, you have to put smaller standoffs. So these standoffs here, there are 30 mil standoffs. Focus. So basically these standoffs are 30 mil, and then the original ones, there will be these ones will be 20 mil standoffs. Now looking at the frame also, you can see that there's a couple of cutouts in the middle here and at the back. So the front of the aircraft itself is this side there, and the back of it is this side there. The reason why is when you do put a 40 mil standoffs, which are much longer, as you can see. So the air unit actually sits on the back vertically. So I'll show you. Let me get the air unit. Okay, so we've got the air unit, and now what happens is the air unit itself sits this way, like so. That's one of the reasons why we've got such a long standoffs. However, with this build, we're actually going to build everything with Cadex Vista. So the Vista will sit most likely at the back, and the whole stack will be at the front here. So so that's the front, like I mentioned, of the actual aircraft. And the flight controller would sit here, and basically the Cadex Vista would sit at the back here. So yeah, so basically what I'm building this with is my spare parts. Now I've purchased the frame, obviously. Now those frames are quite fragile. They are quite thin as well. They're only a couple of millimeters in thickness, unlike like an Evoque or something like that. I fly the Evoque. Those ones are like 5-6 mil thick. So I'll probably recommend this for someone that knows a bit more about building and flying. If you do crash these, they don't really hold out very well. So the reason why we're trying to make sure that you do sort of know how to fly FPV, and you do know more or less, like if you crash it, this frame is quite fragile. Saying that though, the flight characteristics of this thing are fantastic apparently. So it feels like a very, very good quad, and obviously built for indoor flying. So we are using a 3-inch props. Let me get some props as well to show you. So I've been sort of playing around with those with different sizes of props. However, it looks like 75 mil props are the best ones. That's what I've been told, and that's what I'm going to try to use for the first flight and see how they hold out. So the trike props, they are quite aggressive, as you can see. The prop helix is quite aggressive. However, well, they do fit very nicely inside the actual TPU, and they're not going to give you a lot of space, so they're quite tight. So try to put 76 mil props. They do start rubbing, so it's probably not the best thing for these. So 75 mil props is the way to go. I'll show you a couple of different things. So with printouts, and I'll link all of this below as well, but with the printouts, 2 sets, or well, 4, I guess they're all joined, but anyway, they are TPUs, so you can see that they have nice and small holes there, and they fit perfectly into this setup here. So you basically, everything sits nicely. Now, so there's 2 printouts for the ducts. Then what we've got a GoPro holding mount as well. So these ones nicely at the front, like so. So that's 2 of those for each side. What else we've got? We've got rear antenna holder and a nice TPU printout for the XC60 battery holder. So that's another one. What else we've got? We've got GoPro holder. So this is GoPro 9 and 10 without any major issues, and still get hopefully around we're hoping to get about 4-minute flight time. Indoor flying, this is probably perfect. And a little GoPro holder for a just straight in, what have we got? For the little legs that GoPro has. So we've got just basically chucking them in here and save a little bit of weight from the TPU. So we'll see how it goes and which ones we're actually going to use. Show you a couple of components now. Now, as you know, with previous builds, all the videos are linked up here, but we've got my previous flight controller. Now this flight controller is from the old, I think it was an old 3-inch cinewhoop as well, 4S. It seems to be going okay. As you can see, the capacitor is a bit bashed, so I might change that as well, see how it goes. I do have a spare one. We do have a XT30 connector, which is the little one. And so yeah, reviewing flight controller, we've got ESCs, and the flight controller should be pretty much ready to go for flying. What else we've got? We've got top plate. So top plate that comes with the hardware for the squirt. Oh, and legs as well. Sorry, forgot to mention the legs. So we've got little TPUs for the legs underneath. I've put one already down there, and they work very well for them to sort of nicely land on. So the little TPUs, all the links are below. Yep, so we're going to be putting this Cadex Vista in here. So we've got proper DJI camera, and so yep, that will fit nicely in the back itself. So as mentioned before, I like to build my quads from the outside in. So they basically go motors in first, and then we'll solder all the components in. So I've managed to already put 4 motors in. Now the motors that I'm using, they're from the old ProTech 35, so the Xing 6X motors at 2300 kV. Okay, all the motors are on. Yeah, so every flight controller has a arrow at the front, and that will show you the direction of the front of the actual controller itself. Now, probably the best way just to sort of mount the ESCs first, solder everything on, and then see how that is going to go. Okay, so first thing is organizing power, connecting XC60 connector to the ESCs, so the electronic speed controllers. Once everything is connected and soldered nicely on, then we can start mounting the ESCs to the frame. Okay, once we have everything on the frame, we are going to basically solder all the motors into the ESCs, so we have a nice and clean connection. When soldering, just be mindful of obviously electronics, not to do any solder splatter, and the cables are nice and short and not too short, so they're not going to interfere with the actual flight controller itself. I had to extend some of the cables to accommodate, and you can see the joint there, and put some heat shrink in there as well. Okay, so next bit is just to pop the flight controller on top and the stack, and if you want more information on it, you can check out my other videos, and that's nicely connecting it and making sure that it's facing the right way. Next thing would be obviously getting everything organized for the Cadex Vista, and the wiring can be a bit tricky with that as well. Wires need to be soldered onto to all the pads, and they are very small and very tiny, so yeah, just be mindful, practice if you need to. Keep in mind, RX goes to TX, TX go to RX on the flight controller itself. And don't forget, obviously, making sure that you connect the ground wire and your voltage in a positive way. Best way to find network diagram, and obviously connect everything the way it should be done for your flight controller. It fits nice and perfect with a 20 by 20 screws securing the Vista to the frame itself. Now keep in mind, if you do have 03 unit as well at the moment, you can follow exactly the same steps, obviously making sure that the wiring does connect the correct way to the flight controller itself. So RX goes to TX and TX goes to RX, depending also if you're using Crossfire or not, but you should be able to figure that out and with some documentation for your specific flight controller. With the TPUs, they fit nicely in, and very snug fit. Okay, and the XC60 connector fits perfectly in there, and it's nicely secured, so it's not going to flop around. If it's not going to cause any problems. You don't need to zip tie it to anywhere. Nice. The antenna from the Cadex Vista sits perfectly in there as well, so it's a really good, nice, clean setup. So when connecting the video system or the camera, just make sure that you nicely tight everything in, and make sure that you don't push it all the way down, because the top plate still has to come on top of that. Now testing everything, making sure that everything works. I should be using a smoke stopper, I guess, but I was pretty confident that everything will be okay. Next part is just popping the TPU ducts in, and they slide really nicely into the standoffs, and they do sit quite well in there. You do need to be mindful, they do obviously bend a little bit because it's TPU, but it does protect the quad if you tend to touch the wall or something like that. Once everything is in, you can attach the GoPro mount. I found that this GoPro mount does give me a little bit of a white vignetting when flying, and so basically I've changed everything back to the small GoPro mount. So the last thing now, we just need to bind everything together to your goggles and to your controller and go for a test flight. All right, so now we finished the build. You can see it, that is nicely complete. I've got some nice GoPro 10 mounts here, and all the motors are mounted nicely. Everything is rock and roll. Rear, we've got your Crossfire Immortal T, your Caddx Vista. So that antenna there gives you access to your video goggles, your DJI system, and this one here sends the signal to your controller, so your Crossfire Immortal T controller, Tango, whichever one you're using. Yeah, so basically wanted to show you as well. So the props that I'm going to be using, I've mentioned earlier, so they are 75mm props, 3-inch props, and they fit nicely in here. You can see it nice, and no major issues with spinning. Now with those props, they're very good props. I haven't actually flown it on it yet, so we'll double check. However, I wanted to show you as well, I got these props as well, fantastic props as well. However, they are 76mm, so there's only a 1mm from from basically the prop itself. However, if you put this on, it fits in, but it doesn't freely spin. So literally, you guys need to make sure that you get a 75mm props, not 76. They're both 3-inch props, but they are different size. Okay, so we've got a final build here. This is shown with a 4S battery. This is a 6S quad as well, so we do get a fair bit of flight time and power at the same time. And it's a really nice build. It's very consistent too.